Hey, welcome back, everybody, for another 5 o'clock show of the Curling Community Conversation. We are very fortunate today to have stolen another representative from District 28, just across the pond over there. Actually, not the pond, across Scottsdale Road. I'd love to introduce to you a man who probably needs no introduction, but I'll go through it anyway. He's the guy in the middle. There's a lot of people behind him on his set, so he's the fellow in the middle. There he is. Graduating from Yale University in 1994, this man went on to teach some preschool kids in a Head Start classroom and founded Jumpstart, a national not-for-profit whose vision is to ensure that every child in America enters kindergarten prepared to succeed. He also started a company in 2001 called Accelero Learning. Accelero Learning, is that correct?
No.
Good. Which basically helps local communities run high-quality Head Start programs. So he's led a life of philanthropy through the early childhood education. He and I have one thing in common. Hopefully we'll have more in common, but both of our wives are teachers, and so he holds a special place in my heart. First, a freshman representative representing District 18, running now for a second term, Mr. Representative Aaron Lieberman. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I have, you know what? It's coming and going, and right now, I feel great right now that you're here on the program. So thanks for lifting me up.
Happy to do it. Happy to be here with you, Eric.
Okay, so tell me first of all, how are you, your wife, and your two boys doing?
Yeah, everybody's doing great. We're getting used to spending a lot of time at home. Like everybody else in this point, we've seen some amazing work going on in our schools to kind of convert and transition everything to online stuff. But everybody's healthy and getting through it. And the legislature has not been meeting, so I've had some additional time for some of the other work projects, and most importantly, a lot of time helping constituents. It's been actually a silver lining on this whole pandemic has been an opportunity to get involved. There's been a lot of people reaching out to the State House, struggling with unemployment, struggling with different issues, and we've got a great team of folks ready to help them. So that's been one nice moment of this time, is having more time to get involved with folks directly.
Yeah, and I have to actually give you a personal thank you, because I was contacted through a friend about a constituents in District 23, not your district, again, over the other side of Scottsdale Road, who had tried to contact Representative Lawrence and was not getting anywhere with the satisfaction of being helped. And I reached out to you, and you never hesitated, said, yes, give my information, have that person call me, we will help them. So thanks very much. I don't know if they followed through, but like you say, it's the thought that counts.
Yeah, we're happy to do it, and it has been particularly in the minority where we can't always get all the legislative victories that we can. Being able to make a difference on that level has been one of the best parts of the job over these last couple of years, for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that we are going to come out of this pandemic a better state, on firmer footing, working together. Our kinder and gentler selves will be coming out, and we're just going to rock it. I really believe it.
Yeah, I hope so, and I think you're right.
So let's get into it, huh? Your website has a common theme throughout it about common sense. That's the common theme, common sense. Right now, you have some wonderful ideas that seem to be languishing because you are in the number of 29. That's your number. You are one of 29 Democrat representatives. The Republicans have 31. I know you to be the person to reach across the aisle. You're a center kind of guy. But unfortunately, you don't have the opportunity. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, I was one of 4 Democrats that beat Republicans across the state in the last cycle, and it brought us to 31 Republicans to 29 Democrats. I'm actually the Democrat with the narrowest margin of victory down there. I won by just 2,000 votes. Like 23, we have more Republicans in Legislative District 28 than we have Democrats. That gap's actually closed a little bit over these last couple of years. But when I got elected, it was 10,000 more Republicans than Democrats. And so honestly, to win, you have to be just a little bit of a common sense person who just wants to go down there and try to make things happen. And I think there are some things that, because we got this close, there were a few opportunities, a few moments when we were able to get something across the line. I think of the texting while driving ban, which had languished down there for about 10 years. and that we were able to get that passed. We were able to repeal the horrible no promo homo that didn't allow the teaching of evidence-based sex education for our students here in Arizona. Those were some of the few times when the majority party allowed something to go up on the board that didn't have the support of a majority of their members. Most of the time their rule is if it doesn't have a support of the majority of their members, they won't put it up. And that's a shame, because there's a lot of us in the middle on both sides who could do a lot of good together. You know, if you just needed 31 votes, you could get 31 votes on a lot of things that would really help move the state forward. And to your point, common sense things, investing in preschool instead of spending more money at the things that when you don't have preschool, you have to fix, like special ed and grade retention and other things that cost a lot more money downstream. Investing in higher education instead of prisons, right? I mean, 10 years ago, we spent $2, almost $1.5 billion for higher education and half that for prisons. It's now literally flipped. We've got a lot of people who would support that, but we don't get to vote like that. We get to only vote on things that have a majority of the majority for the most part. And that's one of the challenges about our current system. And it really just gets down to we're not hearing all of the ideas. I don't think one party rule is a good idea no matter who the party is. We've had 10 years of it in Arizona. And that's one of the reasons elections like yours, Eric, are so important, because the balance of the state has never been this close. And we can get to a point where it's not going to be some sort of democratic takeover of all branches of government. It's going to be, for the first time in a decade, a negotiation between different ideas to get to something that works for a broader group of voters. And I think that'll be a good thing for Arizona when it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking to Representative Aaron Lieberman from District 28. I'm going to ask Andy to put your website in the little bar there in the Facebooks. It's Aaron, the number 4, Arizona.com. We might not get to all the different issues, but there's really again, common sense solutions to a lot of the problems we're experiencing here. And I would encourage everybody to go there. Also, if you have a question for Representative Lieberman, please feel free to type it into the bar. Through the magic of Andy Gomez, we will try to get those answered. So going along with common sense and your background now in early childhood education, for me as a teacher, we talk about the achievement gap. We kind of throw darts at the board and try to solve things in 1 year. We don't have a long-term solution to put ourselves on firm footing. I believe, and I think you agree, that early childhood education is one of the greatest investments that we can make in our state. Can you talk a little bit from your experience how early childhood education helps out?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, on some level, some things are so obvious, you don't need a complicated chart to figure it out. A house is only as strong as its foundation, right? And what early childhood provides is a strong foundation for learning. People talk about the achievement gap. I think if you really look at the underpinnings, it really gets down to an exposure gap. We know that by 5 years old, there are big differences between low-income kids and middle-income kids on average. By the way, there's always exceptions on both sides, but on average, a middle-income 5-year-old has heard 30 million more words than a low-income 5-year-old. So much of life is about osmosis and exposure and vocabulary. And just think about that. One of these kids is starting kindergarten having heard 30 million more words spoken aloud. That same exposure often goes to books in the home and regular nighttime reading. Many people, when they're putting their kids to bed, are reading every night. And, there's lots of parents out there who are like, oh, really, one more book? When the kid says, one more book. But there are some homes that don't have that rich exposure to print. And a lot happens in those interactions of understanding how letters form words and how words work, and just being exposed to those types of things. You're also building a deeper relationship that happens through that type of learning. And I particularly saw this at Oscillera Learning, where today 5,000 kids are in Oscillera Learning Head Start programs all across the country, and another 25,000 kids are impacted by programs that Oscillera has partnered with to help improve their kind of offerings overall. I've worked side by side. One of the amazing things about Head Start is you actually have a parent policy council that makes governance decisions. They vote up or down on the annual budget, on hiring, on firing. They're really partners with parents. All kids in Head Start, or 90% of them, have to be living at or below federal poverty. So it's a very unique opportunity to really work side by side with people from all different backgrounds. And I never met a single parent who didn't want what was best for their child. I often ran into parents who didn't know what exactly their role was and what they needed to do to make that happen. And that's what high quality early childhood programs can help do. Both provide the exposure, provide the awareness, provide a lot of those enriching experiences for young kids, but also help the parents understand what they can be doing to help support their child's learning. And when you do those two things together, it's like rocket fuel for kids. They start to get it, to get exposed to more things. And what grade did you teach, Eric, when you were a teacher?
I've actually taught all grades. I started 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. I did a credit recovery program for high school students, a behavior kind of recovery program for kindergarten through 8th grade students. I was all around.
Well, the whole goal of high quality early childhood is that when a kid walks into kindergarten at 5 years old on his or her own 2 feet, they go in and they're ready to learn. And, all teachers are trying to figure out how we're going to keep this classroom moving. You want those to be the kids who can fully take advantage of that kindergarten setting and be able to kind of keep up with their peers. And that's what high quality pre-K does. It turns out high quality is an important qualifier there. We need to fund it sufficiently. We need to support the teachers. We need to make sure they're high quality instructors who are well paid. It's not just doing anything and, expecting to get those results. You've got to get to that high bar of quality. And unfortunately, that's another area where, Arizona has really missed the mark.
Yeah. I will say that Alex Baker, I'm going to get to your question. I'm going to kind of do it towards the end after we get through this kind of policy stuff, but remind me, we'll get to that. Thanks for tuning in. Here's the thing. I believe that we also have to go a little bit earlier than pre-K. I think that in our state, we have underfunded social programs, and the fabric of our economy is geared to low cost, low wage work. That we have 25% of our kids growing up in poverty, and it's this cycle that we must break. And as you said, we have parents that always want the best for their kids, but sometimes Maslow's hierarchy says that the best for their kids is shelter over their head and food on the table, and that takes up all their time. What do you think? Are you familiar with community schools?
Yeah. Well, I think. Well, let's stay on the 0 to 5 piece, because I know a little bit about community schools, but I'm more versed in some of these other areas. And the evidence around 0 to 5 services is really, really strong. This is another area where we haven't had an investment mentality at all in the state. That's how I think we should be looking at things. And in fact, 33 other states have moved forward in supporting pre-K or services to kids 0 to 5. By the way, including Oklahoma, which by almost every measure is more conservative than Arizona. They have universal pre-K for every last 4-year-old. It's one of the most popular programs in the state. 33 other states have moved forward. It's been actually one of the biggest changes in the landscape for young kids has been state funding for these initiatives. Arizona has moved backwards. Only through the voters have we had a voter protected initiative called First Things First that funds some scholarships and some quality improvement efforts. It's funded by a tobacco tax, an 89-cent per pack tobacco tax.
The Bashes were the ones that really pushed that forward, right?
Dean Basha and Eddie Basha were huge in helping make it happen. It's had a long tortured history because in the recession, the legislature tried to take all the money and the court said they can't do it and they had to put it back. But what it's done is made a real investment. I mean, there's good and bad news about a tobacco tax. The good news is it discourages people from smoking. And fewer people smoke. That's also the bad news if that's your funding source, which is fewer people are smoking. And First Things First is a very thoughtful plan where they were able to get some money from a first year of operations before they had spun up all the programming. So as their money declines, they're filling it in with that extra money, but it's heading towards a cliff that they're going to fall over in about another 5 years or so. And even as it is, it's essentially less money or flat each year. But the state also used to make additional contributions beyond that. There used to be $90 million in child care subsidy. Just think about this. This is child care for low-income working moms so they can go get a job. I think it's a good example of common sense. It's the John F. Kennedy, the best social program in the world is a job. It's hard to get a job when you've got young kids at home. That's what child care subsidy does. The state zeroed out its $90 million contribution to child care subsidy going into the recession, has not put a single dollar back. We had a $20 million pre-K effort for at-risk pre-K, they called it. I don't love the name, but you get the point. Zeroed out and not a dollar put back. And then you have First Things First just fighting to stay steady and facing a cliff. While at the same time, people say, well, like, where is all of our money going as a state? And this is one of the heartbreaking things. There's only 2 parts of our state government are bigger than they were 10 years ago. Eric, do you want to guess? You want to take
Yeah, I'm going to go with corrections for the win.
Corrections for 1.4 billion is
Ding,
essentially
ding, ding.
the answer there. We are now spending, 10 years ago going into the recession, we spent twice as much, about 1.5 billion on higher ed and about half of that on corrections. Those numbers are totally flipped now. We're spending twice as much to lock people up as we are to help support our students after high school to get into college or community college or our 4-year schools. And to just think about that for a moment, so many of our prisoners were nonviolent offenders, never hurt anyone but themselves, need help, need, in most cases, addiction treatment, which, by the way, they almost never get in prison. And they come out with at least just as many problems as they went in, while we're not giving them the support that they need to become members of a productive workforce. Maybe we'll have a part 2 on that, on the whole higher ed situation. But just to tie this back to the second area, do you want to take a guess at the second area where we're spending more money?
No, I don't.
It's not K-12. We're still below where we would have been in 2009 and 2009.
I know we're spending much more money in private education.
Yeah, well, it's not K-12. Let me put it that way. But it's our Department of Child Safety, which has seen a huge increase. Some of that much needed. None of us want to see a child left in a home, and it's a very difficult area. But there's a connection with child care subsidy and Department of Child Safety, right? If we had so limited TANF that you could only get a year of lifetime cash benefits for many of the years. It recently went up to 2. So if you've got a young kid at home, you got to go work, you can't get child care subsidy, your TANF is limited, you can get a case of abuse or neglect by leaving a 3 or 4-year-old home while you're going to Chipotle or wherever else. Then DCS is involved. DCS, that's an $80,000 per year per child cost. I mean, just think about that, overall from an investment perspective. We're not doing the things that help people keep families together, support their family, and get their kid ready for school. We're spending the money locking people up and getting DCS involved to deal with the problems with our lack of investment. And that's what we need to flip. We need to get to an investment mentality from a state perspective and get away from these ideas of just stripping everything away and only dealing with the problems when we can't step over them anymore and they're right on our doorstep.
So, I'm going to cut in here and just reintroduce you because, one, I'm going to give you a breath. You do command a stage. This is Representative Aaron Lieberman from District 28. Please type in your questions. Hey, on a scale of 9 to 10, how awesome is Kelly Butler to be working beside you?
She has been fantastic to work with. She is just such a powerful advocate and really courageous. I just want to say, for people who aren't familiar with all of the details, often we'll do a single shot like is happening in 23 right now, because a lot of independents go in, they don't know.
Hey, don't rush. Tell everybody what a single shot strategy is.
Well, that's what I'm getting to, and it's a really important strategy. And that man right there, Eric Meyer, was one of the inventors of it, and now we're going to use it for Eric Curlin. So we're going to have a little Eric connection there. But the basic idea is, there's a lot of voters, they're not super involved politically. They go in there and they choose one Democrat and one Republican. And it's pretty random who they choose. And, they're done with that part of the ballot, because for our state house races, we have 2 Dems and 2 Republicans typically listed. If you only have one name under that Democrat, it picks up him, in this case, Eric Curlin, gets a little bit of an advantage from those independents, because every independent that splits, if they're choosing a Dem or choosing Eric. And we did that in LD28. Eric Meyer, who happens to be right there in this photo, he spent 8 years as the only Democrat in an overwhelmingly Republican legislative district by virtue of that single shot strategy. And 2 years ago, when the district was deciding if they should support a second candidate, it was Representative Butler who stood up and said, I don't want to be down there if we're not able to make real change. And those additional votes would come from her. And, she won a very close race initially. Since she's become the top vote getter in the entire district. She's just amazing because of all her hard work. but she really took a chance and put the state's interest forward over her own political reelection prospects. And that says all you need to know about Kelly Butler in terms of her willingness to kind of stick out there and stick out for what she believes.
I'm going to put that into a numerical score and say on a scale of 9 to 10, you give her a 10.
Absolutely.
Okay.
By the way, she's also a lot of fun to work with. She says this too. It's nice to commiserate. Our offices are right next to each other. We have days of wanting to bang your head on a desk. So it's nice to have someone going through that with you.
So I'm going to do something that I did yesterday when we had Representative Butler on, and that is to say that we are going to put in the comment section right now, Andy's going to put in a Act Blue link where people can donate, because I don't want to see you and Kelly Butler banging your heads against the walls. It is not healthy. What we need to do is change your 29 to a 31 so that the great ideas that you have for common sense solutions and the courage of Kelly Butler need to be in leadership positions for the majority. So what I would ask is for people to donate to that cause. It will go 50% to me, 50% to you, because we depend on each other to put out legislation that moves Arizona forward. And I tell you what, for me, and I think you can chime in a moment, for me, I will work with anybody to move legislation forward. And that Walt Blackman and his sentencing reform that you just talked about, and I'm all on board with that. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you get down to the legislature and you start to see who are the folks here who you can work with. We've had a great history of awesome teachers in the legislature. They tend to be practical people who just want to get things done, who just want to move things forward. Our veterans, Walt Blackman is a great example. We'll be the first to say we have very different political views on a lot of issues, but there's a lot of things that connect us in terms of our belief in trying to build things for Arizona. In my first session in the legislature, I championed a bill that would have created matching funds for students who do AmeriCorps in Arizona. The state would match that. You get $6,000 from the feds, you get $6,000 from the state. That would give you, for a year of service, you'd earn effectively enough scholarship to get through 2 years of our community colleges. I named it the John McCain Public Service Fellowship after Senator McCain, who had such an incredible legacy of service. We got it very close, by the way, out of the House, 48-12. It's hard if you don't vote for the budget to get things in the budget. That's a difficult lesson that we all learn. But this go-round, Representative Blackman introduced that bill, was the prime sponsor of it. Him and I worked very closely fighting for it. But we need practical problem solvers down there, no matter what the letter is after your name. And we need to have different conversations. And I think that's what this is really about, is trying to get to that majority. It won't be some crazy takeover, and sometimes I'll hear members say it's going to be some socialist agenda. I ain't a socialist. I've been an entrepreneur. I'm all for people being successful, taking care of their family. I also recognize that everyone who started a great company, did it on employees that were educated overwhelmingly in our great public schools. And you got there on the roads that we all helped pave. And, no one is successful alone. It's those investments that only the government can make that help everybody succeed. That's what creates the condition for every individual success. And that's what we need to do a lot more of here in Arizona.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to some of those common sense solutions. That's common sense. I mean, you put money into early childhood education, you get kids that are at grade level and above. If you put money into community colleges instead of zeroing out the budget, which they did, you give people a chance to step into their maturity and keep on matriculating. Yeah. We know that if you graduate high school, just graduating high school, you're basically making close to $1 million more a year. I mean, over a lifetime. And that is not only just a moral imperative, but it's an economic imperative.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you a question. We spend a lot of money, and we're going to keep this on the education front, I guess. And we're just going to have you back for a bigger conversation.
I'll do it.
Thank you. Let's talk about the tax credit scheme that we have working right now. About $600 million a year goes to private school tax credits, where you can give $2,000 per family to tax credit. And in other words, these are taxes that should be paid anyway, but now you're directing it to kind of subsidize your kids' brophy education, which is expensive. Yeah. And What I like to note is that over the years that the tax credit has been in place, private education has been flat
Yeah.
in enrollment.
I don't know. It was about 22,000 kids in 1998. There's about 22,000 kids today.
Right. So it's not like, they say, oh, we want to open this up for kids that are impoverished and give them an opportunity. And my point has always been fund the system that serves over 1 million kids, and let's then talk about, what we can do. So tell me, what would you like to do if you're in the majority? If people do donate to our campaigns and we get to that, what are we going to do about those tax credits?
Yeah, it's an interesting issue, and it's an interesting question, and there's some question around whether you need a supermajority to make any changes there or not. I think the reality is, at least before we went into this recession, we were looking at $1 billion surplus. We could have done a hell of a lot of good for our schools, for our kids in pre-K, for our higher ed, if we had just committed to putting that first and working with those dollars first and foremost to make investments in the things that we know would produce greater success for the rest of Arizona. I agree with you that we need to first and foremost address our K-12 system and make sure that it is actually fully funded with competitive teacher salaries that will allow us to fill the 1,300 classroom vacancies we had, again, before COVID-19. I think anyone's economic model of how you're going to make progress in a classroom starts with having a teacher in front of that classroom for the whole school year. And we just literally haven't been there. We actually have plenty of certified teachers. Christine Marsh, another wonderful teacher running for state senate in LD 28, she makes the point, if you look at the number of certified teachers we have in Arizona, we got tons, but they're not teaching because the pay has been so bad. I mean, this, you're the rare 2-teacher family. There's not young 2-teacher, there's not, 28-year-olds both on a teaching salary. They'll literally say this, oh, you can't marry another teacher, you can't support your family if you're both teaching. And that's sad when there have been so many couples over the years who that was, what a great life it was if you could support your family, you could, both be committed to the community. Telly Butler loves to tell the story of a friend who was an amazing teacher, and he quit teaching because in the summer he was making more every month skimming pools than he was as a teacher. I mean, let's just think about that. Well, we will pay you more to pull bugs out of a pool than to teach the next generation of kids in Arizona. So we need to get focused on first and foremost doing everything we can to make sure we're fully funding our K-12 schools.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that people really understand the residual effect of that. When you don't have a qualified teacher in the classroom, the spiraling, the cost that adds up. I mean, if you're a fiscal conservative, you have to invest. You have to invest prudently. And not investing in education is just a recipe for disaster. It's going to cost so much more in the long run. We have to look towards the future. My family, like many, we had to put off having children. It should never be that if you choose to be a teacher, you shouldn't have to choose between teaching kids and having kids.
Exactly. No. That's exactly right. And that's, the good news is ultimately these investments pay off. If you look at Colorado, we have about 48% of our kids go to something after high school. We have a statewide goal, it's called Achieve 60, of getting to 60% by 2030. Honestly, we don't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting there right now because we're not doing anything in the state to help us get there. But if you look at states that have a higher college going or post-secondary attainment, it's kind of a wonky term. Guess what? Way more GDP per capita, way more, there's a much greater economic environment in those states because they're able to get the jobs of the future. And again, before we went into the recession, I saw this. I toured around the state where they build helicopters, the Apache helicopters. They were backed up. They move them from station to station because they didn't have enough kids who were able to pull the wiring through. These are incredible jobs they could not fill. And meanwhile, we have 125,000 kids, euphemistically called opportunity youth, 18 to 25, who weren't in school or working because they didn't get the K-12 experience they needed to be prepared to be successful. And that's what we need to get back to. And I think that's the real opportunity of what we can do. Did someone have a question? Didn't someone have a question?
Yes, Alex, I was just going to throw that in because you mentioned Christine Marsh and Alex Baker. He asked, and he wants to kind of know this, right? So this isn't about policy, but he wants to hear your thoughts. What do you give her as odds this year? Kate McGee has obviously more money on hand this time around, but how do you handicap it right now?
Yeah, it is a great question, and I always say to folks, if our state had all of our Republicans were like Senator McGee, it would be a better state. I think the challenge that we have is there's very few, honestly, and the leadership overwhelmingly have a much more different view of the world. Christine came within 263 votes or something like that out of 90,000 cast. Just think about that. Typically, off-cycle years are much better for Republicans than Democrats. We completely almost turn that around, but usually it's about a 6 or 7 point advantage for Republicans in non-presidential years because there's a lot of folks who just come out and vote for the presidential cycle. So you'd think if that number holds, that's a positive thing. But we've had a big change in the demographics in LD28. For the first time, there's more Democrats than independents. We're actually we've gained about 5,000 Democratic registered voters. We're within 4,000 of the Republicans. It's never, ever been that close. And I think that's a huge opportunity for for Christine Marsh because, we've been doing the work, and some of it's been people just getting tired of our overcrowded, underfunded schools. And a lot of people are starting to say, okay, we're ready to sign up. And I think that's going to bode well for our Democratic candidates because of who we are at our core, which is pragmatic problem solvers who just want to go down there and make the state work.
Yeah, and I want to put something out there to folks that are kind of listening. Kate Brophy McGee is a good person. The problem is that she's one of very few in the majority that she is really, for the most part, ineffective because once they choose their leadership, in the Senate and in the House, those are the people that are the gatekeepers of good bills that do not get through.
Yeah.
And I'll just one more point. People were upset about people like Kelly Townsend and what she said about storming the Capitol and opening up the state and all that. And she's running unopposed in the Senate. Look, the best way to beat or defeat a Kelly Townsend is to elect a Christine Porter Marsh. Because then you take away the voice. She's there. She'll still be there. But she's neutralized. She's neutered, right? She's the Bob Barker right there, spayed and neutered. She's not kind of producing any bad legislation.
Yeah, and again, I think that I'll be honest, the governor signs something like 400 bills every legislative session, roughly. Usually, 5, 6, 7, 8 will be Democrat prime sponsor, and this is when we have 3 seats that are separating both parties, right? It is a broken system right now. My hope is that we'll do things differently if we're in the majority, that we will encourage the folks who are really willing to work in the middle across party lines to get things done and that they'll have a voice. Unfortunately, they haven't had that voice right now. I do think the more extreme folks, I'm okay with them having a little bit less of a microphone. And the reality is right now with the things being so close down the line, the majority has to get every single last one of their votes together on important things. And that gives people leverage for stuff that is not what I'd call in the best interest of the state. And that's what we're trying to get to, is just a lot more balance down there and a better ability to make good decisions for the state of Arizona.
Yeah, and the funny thing is you speak about common sense. Common sense, basically, the mark against us as Democrats are we're going to raise everyone's taxes. The fact is you can't do revenues without 2/3 of each chamber. It's not going to happen. Nobody's raising anybody's taxes. Now take a look at us and see what the common sense is looking like, because we're going to do that. Yeah. Hey, I gotta kind of wrap this up. I am going to invite you back, maybe also with Representative Butler, because we have to talk about the fact that 75% of our corporations don't pay them, but the minimum in taxes, and the fact that we have, all these different things that really need to be addressed. Kelly Butler with her buying into the Medicaid program, giving people an opportunity to get health care. But tomorrow's program at 5 o'clock, we have a very special guest. It's me. We're having a little happy hour for the Education Army. I'll be buying, so please RSVP. Next week is Teacher Appreciation Week. We're going to have all these great people. We have Joe Thomas, leader of the Arizona Education Association, Chris Ambry, leader of the Scottsdale Education Association, Dawn from Save Our Schools, We have a school board member on Thursday. And on Friday, we have Superintendent of Schools, Kathy Hoffman, coming on. So it's going to be a great week, 5 o'clock every day. Now it's time to get into the fun part of our program, Mr. Lieberman. Are you ready to play Common Sense?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay. This is going to, I looked in today's circular over at Bash's and Fry's, and we're going to do a little kind of Price is Right, where I'm going to ask you to name the price of a particular item closest to the common.
You know what, Eric, we're breaking up here, Eric. I think I have a bad internet. It's getting a little fun now. I'll give it a shot. I don't do a lot of shopping myself, but I'm
yeah, so that's why it'll be fun. Okay, so here we go. In lieu of Cinco de Mayo coming on. Now remember, these are specials. These are in the circular. So when you're a fiscal conservative, you pick up that paper that goes, right at the door, and you say, this is what's on my shopping list. How much is a large avocado at Bash's right now?
I'm going to say $1.79.
Wow. 77 cents, my friend. 77 cents.
Get down to Bash's. That's a steal.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to Albertsons now for some common sense, a little fiscal conservatism. How much am I spending for a pound of boneless, skinless chicken breast?
I'm gonna go with, so this is what's on sale. I'm giving like the meat. I think $4.99. $4.99 on sale for boneless, skinless chicken breast by the pound.
No, these aren't gold-plated chicken breasts. They're skinless chicken breast.
$2.99.
$1.47. Get yourself on down to Albertsons. $1.47 a pound.
That's crazy. I don't think there's an Albertsons in LA 28.
Okay, and the funniest name for a container, I don't know why it's the only one, but a clamshell of strawberries, which is 2 pounds.
Yeah.
How much is on sale? 2 pounds of a clamshell of strawberries.
My youngest son Theo is going to be very interested in this answer, because if it's below $5, we're going to get some of those. $4.99.
You, sir, are fantastic. It's $5.
I dialed it in. It took me a little while, but I dialed it in.
Okay, just a couple more for the healthy eating, because I see an avenue where you are good. So let's go. Granny Smith apples, price per pound on sale.
That's a $2.99.
That's $1.29, sir. Get out and buy your kids some apples with those strawberries. Let's make a little fruit salad. Hey, you know what? You know what goes good? Fruit salad, I hear. If you put fruit in yogurt, what's one Yoplait yogurt on sale? Little container.
Little container, 49 cents.
Wow, that's close enough for us. That's a winner right there. Mr. Lieberman, that was 39 cents on the Yoplait. Go out and get your deals. Fiscal conservative, common sense. I want you all to go to Aaron, AARON, the number 4, Arizona.com. Really read about what Representative Lieberman's pumping out there, because it is common sense. It is what we need to do. And I would be just privileged to serve with you and Kelly Butler. It's just a real privilege.
We would love to have you, Eric. I just want to say thank you first and foremost for all your years in the classroom. I know with my wife is a former teacher, and seeing what Christine Marsh does every single day, and knocking so many doors. That's one of the things I loved about knocking doors in LD 28. When you say Miss Marsh, half the time they're like, she was my teacher over at Chaparral. You have had such an impact on so many kids in your classroom. You're going to have an even bigger impact if we get an opportunity when you get elected to be down there with me on the education committee, making good policy to move the state forward. So thanks for all that you have done, and thanks for retiring so you could get at this full time, because that's what we need right now, and you're just the guy for the job.
That's the commitment, my friend. We have to do more than just what we could do for our classroom kids. We have to do it for all the kids in Arizona. So what we usually do here at 5 o'clock is we last about a half hour. We've actually gone 40 minutes, and it's gone like that. So once again, thank you, Representative Lieberman. We have to have you back on the show. What we do right now is we dance. We try to dance. So dance on off of here.
Is there?
Yeah. Thanks so much.